We're live. Welcome to Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I'm your host, Asher, and our guest today is Vanessa and Lori. And they're going to get to tell us about their story around our theme today, which is failure. Failure is our theme today, and we get to explore the journey of Lori's journey around failure, Vanessa's journey around failure. So if you guys are catching us on live, go ahead and put hashtag live in the chat. If you're catching us on replay, go and put hashtag replay in the chat. And we're going to start off with Lori. Do you mind introducing us? Tell us a little bit about you that we haven't known yet.
Oh, sure. My name is Lori Konkler. I am an intuitive business success coach and messaging strategist, also a digital nomad. So a little bit about me. I work with primarily women who I like to call visionary entrepreneurs and CEOs, and have a special place in my heart for travel and anybody who loves travel. It was what my company was founded on. I started as a travel blogger. And now I'm not doing anything with travel blogging. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And what I really love to do is just help amazing, brilliant women transform their businesses and their lives from the inside out.
Where are you hailing from, Lori? If you don't mind.
Today I am here in Arizona, Prescott, Arizona.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for the introduction of yourself. And Vanessa, you don't mind telling us where you're
Hello.
hailing from and a little bit about you.
Yeah, definitely. So I am Vanessa Iceton. I am a registered psychologist. I am in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So far away from everyone else over there. Um, However, it's warm here today. But I work with basically all ages, usually though 14 and up. I am therapist in regards to just talk therapy and a grief recovery specialist as well. So I run a grief group. And I also work with people with like trauma, PTSD, self-worth, self-esteem problems. I see anyone with like anxiety, depression, OCD, phobias, ADHD, kind of honestly, overall, pretty competent in quite a few things. I worked in public health for a long time and currently have my own private practice and it's going strong. So,
Wow. You guys got the versatile set of skill set, specialty that we get to talk about
mhm.
today. But before we get into what you guys specialize in, we're gonna start with journeys because I often enjoy people's, ways to where they are right now. And we're gonna kind of have the conversation around failures because based on all my themes throughout this week, oftentimes our stories is strapped into those containers that we get to share with other people because oftentimes people love to hear about what are the things that you fail at most in your life that you like, oh, I came out of this thing and it made me the person I am today, and I wouldn't give that thing back. If somebody show up in my house trying to rob me, breaking the house, trying to steal it, I would protect it because I don't want nobody to steal it because it was so valuable to me. And we're gonna talk about those experiences that you're like, I'm holding on to this thing now because they gave me something to carry on throughout life. So if we got to start with you, Vanessa, if you
Awesome.
had to share with us some of your moments of failure that been very transformative for you, that anybody would listen to you might say, oh, I see myself in that same story. What would that be? What would that experience be that you want to share?
Yeah, my experience was very drawn out. It was very long. It was for the licensing process. So basically, everyone who is a registered psychologist needs to write what they call the EPPP, which is the examination for professional practice of psychology. And this is a designation that's required after your master's of counseling. So I completed my master's of counseling in 2017 and kind of started studying for the EPPP 8 months later and kind of knowing like, okay, this is something I got to do along with my 1600 hours and supervision hours and stuff like that. So very long, but I was like, okay, like I got this and started out in the process, ended up failing the first two times. Life circumstances
Hmm.
kind of had a factor in that, to be honest. So I just basically was like, okay, those I just winged it. Now I'm gonna actually like put full force in. So then it was basically 5.5 years later, nine failures. I
Wow.
finally passed. I finally passed on the 10th time, and I felt like my life was on hold for basically 6 years, since 2017. And then I just passed in December
Yeah.
2023. So
Okay.
for basically 6 years, my life was on hold, and there was a lot of failing in that process. But finally did it and persevered. But I'm sure you'll ask more about the journey in that process, and I'm willing to share. But I probably would have felt really embarrassed and humiliated before if I was explaining this process maybe 8 months ago. Um, but now I'm kind of like, you know what? This is my life. This is my story. It's my passion. It's my failures, and I'm willing to take ownership of it.
Hold on. Is that like the Guinness Book of Record or something for?
No, um, I've heard a few more people have had taking a few more failures than me, but no. Actually, just as of January 2023, they actually changed it where you're only allowed to take the EPPP now 3 times. Anything more than that, you're unfortunately probably won't make it in the field. So it's a little bit discouraging for new and upcoming provisionals, but with my process, I was, I guess, it was actually my third and final time that I had, even though it's the ninth failure, it was kind of the third and final time that I actually passed on the 10th, but passed on like the third attempt that I technically had left. So yeah, so it's kind
Mm.
of a big success story, but also a big failure story, but learning from my failures.
No, okay, so I'm gonna stick you with a little bit, Vanessa, because I know Lori's curious too, because just imagine that you had to go at something 10 times, because some people quit after the third or the second time. They're like, nah.
Mhm.
But you keep going, you kept going, you kept going. Like, I am curious to know what kind of who was in your head telling you to keep going? Like what was there for you that say, hey, I'm gonna keep trying this thing no matter what, even if it take me 20 times, I'm
Mhm.
gonna keep going after it. What kept you going?
Oh, it's a good question. Like I think I would say passion. This career, my job, is to me not really. I don't see it as work. It's something. It's my dream. It's always been my dream. It's been
Hmm.
my goal. It's been my passion forever. It's something that I know that I'm good at. It's something that I've invested a ton of money and a ton of energy and time into. That I'm like, I can't give up. Like, and I at first it was kind of like, okay, I'll keep going. And I think I had set a time limit for myself at one point. And then when the three kind of came into play, I was like, okay, I only have three now. And after probably that eighth, ninth one, or I guess the second or third, however you want to label it, I basically did want to give up. There was quite a few times where I was like questioned my abilities, I questioned my profession, I questioned all of the things, and I was like, you know what? This is my dream. This is my passion. If I don't see it through, and one of my mottos is live with no regrets. I'm like, I will regret this choice forever. So I basically had to keep going. And my core belief deep down, I'm very self-aware, is I am a failure. It's something that I've carried with throughout my childhood all the way into adulthood. And I'm like, I don't want to be seen as a failure. And I'm turning that into success. And I did. So
Lori, when you hear Vanessa says she don't want to be seen as a failure, what pops up for you?
Oh, so many coach things. I'd love to dig in. But honestly, what comes up for me is that I'm gonna kind of play the woman card here, but so many women, especially, I mean, entrepreneurs in general, and just really high achieving people tend to have those feelings and like feelings of not being good enough. And I know you said that you cover, you talk about some of this too, Vanessa. Um, and that lack of, self-trust and the belief that you might fail, that fear, it holds so many people back. So I just want to commend you, Vanessa, for continuing to, what's that one, the Chumbawamba song or whatever, like I get knocked down, I get up again or whatever. Like that's what came to my mind, like 10
yeah.
times, like, keep going.
I'm listening, Vanessa. Vanessa, I think you have what they call the masters in falling down and a PhD in getting up, because you you kept at this thing continuously until you ran out of options to do it again. And
Yeah.
then the options that last time, like, okay, either do or die, and you actually didn't die,
Yeah.
so so
I
congratulations on that.
appreciate that. Yeah, because it was the options. It was kind of like after the eighth and ninth like failure, I basically looked into other options of CCC, which is Certified Canadian Counselor. I had looked into like, okay, if that doesn't work out, then potentially life coach or all these things that I was like that I in the back of my mind was like, I don't want to do this. And it was kind of like, I knew that I'm like, if I don't do this, like, I am going to be very upset at myself and I'm very hard on myself. And all those criticisms and judgments came into play. And I was like, you know what? No, like that can stay out until I've run out of options, basically. And it wasn't until like obviously, yes, I passed, but I think I had to start exploring the other options until to I think get motivated to be like, this is not my dream, this is not where I'm meant to be. And when you know your being in your soul, and this is something you've dreamt of for so long,
Hmm.
you kind of like you power through and you stick with it. And yeah, like Lori, like you said, being a woman in any field or like starting your business, and there's a lot of judgment and criticisms already societally, and I'm like, I can't prove them right. But really, actually, I had to prove it to myself that I could do it. So
Okay, we're gonna put a pin right there and come back because
yeah.
Vanessa, we're gonna dig deep. And Lori, thinking through Vanessa's journey about the relentless pursuit of getting that goal, that green light, and thinking about your life right now, what are some of those big red lights that you've set at for a while, or experiences that you felt like a failure in that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I lost count. So it's
Hmm.
probably more than 10, but there's been a lot of things along the way. And contrary to maybe popular belief, it's not that it really ever goes away. You always are going to have failures in your life. But I read a book a few years ago. It's called The Obstacle is the Way.
Mm.
I highly recommend it, by the way. And it, made me kind of just look at things a little bit differently in terms of my failures. So I wouldn't necessarily call all of them failures now, but from the outside perspective, yeah, they definitely were some failures. Starting out 8 years ago, I quit my job and I had a decent job. I was an executive. I had a team beneath me. I got paid pretty well, had good benefits. Uh, and for all intents and purposes, I was successful. I wasn't unhappy, but I knew that I wanted to do something different and something more. And I wanted to have more freedom and flexibility within my own world instead of other people deciding those things for me. So I quit my job. My husband and I moved to the Caribbean. This all happened in 2 months, sight
What
unseen.
what part of the Caribbean?
I was going to ask you because I could tell from your accent, you're in the Caribbean, the Virgin Islands,
Virgin
U.S.
Islands. Okay, okay.
U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix. So we gave up everything. We moved. We started 2 businesses within our first 2 months. I actually started my first one before we even moved there. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to make this work, and we're going to go. And everybody's like, you guys are so brave. I can't believe you guys are doing this. And well, needless to say, our businesses didn't take off like we had hoped, and my husband's actually did better at first than mine. We were making money, but I had to tuck my tail between my legs and go get a real job and pay the bills because I had to admit I might have jumped in too soon. As excited as I was about this, it wasn't necessarily the right time, and we didn't have the means to make it work. So failure number one, move to the Caribbean to start 2 businesses and then end up back at work. And within the first like year and a half, we ended up having to come back. We're from Wisconsin, and come back to Wisconsin and get a job. And I was able to go back and forth still because I did have my event planning business still in the Virgin Islands. Um, and then found another job that brought us back there. And failure number two was I got laid off from that job. So 6 months into that, I was unemployed. My husband was dabbling in his business, but I was making good money. So we weren't really worried about it. So he suddenly had to like jump in and make the money. And I had to make some big decisions about how I wanted to move forward. And that's just a couple of them. I could probably go on for
Okay, okay.
for
So
days.
so 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 what was that business? What kind of business was that, if you don't mind sharing? That you
Yeah. So, well, those were the first 2 businesses. My husband builds and designs furniture, usually mostly reclaimed wood. And then my event planning business, which I still actually do. It's now combined with my coaching. So like I said, they were a success in the end, but it took a lot of perseverance, a lot of really just continuing to go and believe that it was going to work. And those things are what actually led me into the coaching space. And now the retreat space and like the things that I'm most passionate about, and they were the vessel to get me to where I am right now.
Okay. So we're gonna jump into lessons from those failures. So I got your journey of that that failure piece for you, Lori, and then I'm gonna talk
Mhm.
with Vanessa too as well. So if you had to share the biggest, maybe two of the biggest lessons that you've learned from that experience itself, either emotionally or just intellectually, what would you share?
Mhm.
What would that be?
That it can be that easy. And I'm saying success, not failure. Success can be that easy. And I'm saying that easy, I mean like it can be easy and we make it so hard for ourselves. So that's number one. And I can go into that, but success can be easy. And that's been one of my biggest lessons. And I just had to learn it again in the last month. But it paid off big to learn that lesson again. And every time I do, I learn a lot from it. And the second lesson is that you have to be your authentic, true self, that you have to say the things that are on your mind, that you're thinking, stand up for what you believe in, and show up unapologetically. I like to call it letting your freak flag fly, because you're the only thing that is going to stand in your way of success. And you have to believe in yourself in order to actually get to where you want to be. Like those, if you can do those things, everything else will work.
What are your thoughts, Vanessa, when it comes to lessons for your journey, including what Lori just spoke about?
Yeah. Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think, being a mental health therapist now and registered psychologist, like before being provisional, I always would kind of tell people like be your genuine authentic self, right? Like show up for who you are, take responsibility for your own stuff, shit. And and really, what can I swear? And
It's not shit. It's it. It's the H. It's the
yeah,
it.
perfect. And yeah, take responsibility and really show up in that way. So I loved what you said. And there was also like a piece that you said about doing something different, better, or more. And I think it's like, when you're failing and you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again and nothing's different, we have to do something different, better, or more. And what that might look like is going to be different for everyone. So I resonated with what you said there. For me, I think the lessons learned was really, I guess, taking ownership of my failures and what I was not doing. I think, in this process, I probably didn't put a ton of effort into it that I should have maybe from the get-go. School had never really come easy for me, so it was something that I wish I had learned earlier and accepted, I guess, earlier from a younger age, was that I really needed to put in the effort. And I kind of resonate with my clients now in that regard, that when they're like, oh, but that's hard. I'm like, get it. Because, putting in that effort was really, really hard at the time. And I think I thought I could just pass without putting in the effort. And so I would say that, taking responsibility for that effort. And then the other thing I learned was to be really vulnerable, to be vulnerable to the process. I had to let my guard down. I had to let my defenses down. I had to be so vulnerable to the process of failing and failing over and over and over again. And, asking for help and standing up and advocating for myself, being like, I have no idea what I'm doing anymore, and hiring a tutor and asking my friends to come over, even though I felt guilty, that I'm like, you're done this process. Why would you want to help me? And I really had to kind of, let that guard down and be like, I need help and be vulnerable to the process. So those would be probably my two main
Mm.
learning lessons.
I've been working on these two words, success and failure, for a while now. It's one of the big area of focus on. That's why I call my book Two Suitcases to Success, because I was focusing on the idea of success and failure a lot. But here's something that I discovered about failure. And failure is simply a new experience. If you think about it, failure is simply a new experience. So sometimes we was talking about doing the same thing over and over, doing the same thing over and over. And this is what I also discovered about success. Success is a cycle. It's something that happens the same way over and over. So sometimes when you're looking at failure, you might say this is failure, but if you think about some certain things, it's the result that makes the difference. So you can do the same thing over and over, but it's not generate a certain result, but it's a successful cycle, right? Because you repeat the same thing, same thing. So that's very successful when it becomes a cycle. And I was looking to it, I was like, okay, now it started making sense. No, I'm thinking about my life, my journey. So failure is a new experience. I've been specialized in new experiences. Every time I fail, I got a new experience I never got before. But now, what do you do with that information? Sometimes we don't understand that the universe will give us a experience we never had, even though we didn't get the result we wanted, but we got an experience we never had. So it's a new experience when you can start specialize and become an expert at that new experience. So you make your failures something even more richer, because now what can you do with those new experiences? Because other people gonna have them, but you have gotten, like for you, Vanessa, you've gotten nine experience of taking that test, some of trying for that test, right? Some people might have two, but you have 9 plays to connect with somebody around that experience. So you got 9 new experiences somebody never had. So you got more experience than most people.
Yeah.
So I think about that process itself, failure as a new experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually loved when you said that. And when we had talked a while back, like when you had kind of said, I've what did you say? I'm a success at failing. And that was something that really resonated with me. And I'm like, you know what? And I kind of to share that with clients now. I'm like, yeah, like I'm successful at failing because I've really learned how to fail.
Yeah.
And again, like I've had to change my attitude on failing. Obviously, there was times when I really did accept it and I was like, okay, like I'm okay with this. And then other times I was like, oh my God, I failed again. But each time was a learning experience. There was a lot of takeaway. There was a lot of therapy in regards to that. There was a lot of desensitization. There was working through my anxiety. Every test I wrote, I became less anxious. I learned how to process the questions faster. So I'm like, okay, there was a lot that I learned in this process, and to be successful at doing something different every single time. So it wasn't that I was doing something different every single time or doing the same thing. It was that I was like learning. I'm like, what can I do differently, better, or more each time? And I think those experiences added up to me passing the 10th time. And if I was to go back, would I want to do it all over again? Probably not. When you kind of said that at the beginning, I'm like, oh, if I'd want to do this again, maybe less, but I think it's something that I can now say that I'm okay with this. I'm okay with my process. I'm okay with the lessons learned. And then never mind the failing at that. There was a lot of, like you said, Lori, too, a lot of failures within that are intermingled in that. Failed relationships, failed friendships, failed other things that kind of came along with failing this exam because it was my number one priority at the time, and other things fell to the wayside.
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit, Vanessa, a bit. So, because you mentioned you wouldn't do it again, but here's something about that experience. So you said it's been 2017. You've been trying out
Yeah.
this thing. Okay, so if I had to go back and remove all your experience between 2017 and now about taking this test, would you give that up?
Oh, it's hard because like I wish that there was, well, I guess I'm grieving. I grieve the process. I grieve the losses that I lost in the learning, in the lessons learned. Um,
Mhm.
so I feel like it's a little bit of a double-edged sword for me, but would I really want to go through the 10 again? I'm not sure. Would I want to go through like 5? Yeah, but I guess it got me, the 10 got me there. So I'm like, okay, I can go through
Well,
the 9
well,
more
let me
failed
ask the
again.
question differently. If you never remember a moment of that time taking that test, those 9 times, if you don't have no memory of that stuff, how would you feel about yourself?
If I had no memory
Hmm.
of sorry, can you repeat that? I
If you had no
lost you.
memory, if you had no memory of taking the test for the 9 time, preparing for it, taking it for the test for 9 times, you say you're passing on 10 time, right? If you have no memory of that, how would you feel about you right now?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel as proud. I'm not gonna lie. Like I guess like my pride comes into that, and I do have a big ego sometimes. So I'll take ownership and responsibility for that. So yeah, I do agree. Like I can see what you're saying, and I do take ownership of them, and I guess like it has gotten me to where I am today. It's pushed me beyond my all limits that I thought was
Mm.
possible. So yeah, like I wouldn't give it up. Would I wanted to do it again? But no. But I do appreciate, I can honor and appreciate the experience. So
Mm. Lori, you smiling over there. What are you thinking about, Lori? What are you thinking about?
Oh no, I mean, I'm resonating with some of what she's saying, but I would say for me, it was painful to go through a lot of the experiences, but now being mostly on the other side, I don't think I would trade any of them in because they have built me up to where I am. They've made me great at what I do. Like even, I mean, I was good, I think before, but it's made me even greater, and it's made me a greater resource for my clients, and, people that pay
Mm.
me to help them overcome things, because I've lived so much of that myself. So the idea of going through it again maybe doesn't sound that appealing.
there you go.
However,
That's what I connect with.
yeah, that piece, I'm like, do I want? I mean, because there was some really like unpleasant stuff that we go through in these journeys. But if I hadn't gone through every single piece of it, I wouldn't be where I am.
Both you guys said something, and you mentioned this word greater resources because I think Vanessa's gonna be such an awesome person at her work even more because she's gonna be you are a great resource of what it experiences like to not succeed at something so many times. And when you meet people, because you're gonna meet people that they're gonna be going through things that they don't feel like they're doing great at, but then you can process that emotion with them because you have experienced so many of it so many times. So then become that great resource becomes makes you very valuable because now you have experienced nobody else. Like you have 9 times, or Lori, you have so many times doing this thing. Somebody that's gonna look at this thing and be very scared. I'm like, okay, well, I can listen to you, Vanessa, or listen to Lori because you have been through it, you've walked the walk. And what do you got to tell me about the future up ahead? Because you went around the corner, you met the devil 9 times, and you fought back and you won the 10th time. And same thing for you, Lori. So what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts?
For me,
Yes, for you, Laura. Yeah.
okay. So my thoughts on what specifically of what you said? Was there a specific question? Because I have lots of
Like there
thoughts.
was a lot there.
There was a lot there. Okay, let's put it this way. You're meeting the devil and defeat the devil. I'm using the
Mhm,
word devil kind of like not really in a religious way, but the thing
mhm,
that was beating you down, right? So for example, on most journey, a hero's journey, you meet that obstacle beat you down. But then
mhm,
here comes that awesome guy that says, hey, Lori, this is a plan, put that plan in action. You execute that plan, and now you become successful, right? So now
mhm.
you have met some of those things that was beating you down and made you successful. Now, if you had to share those experience again with somebody that's, hey, I want to experience success, but I'm experiencing what you're experiencing failure. Could you explain that to me, how that feel for you? So did I make any sense for you, Lori?
I think so. So how would I explain what I've been through to someone else that
Mm-hmm.
is in it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think stories go a long way, and people understanding and hearing your stories, because it makes it easier for them to put themselves in my shoes. So I would be totally transparent with them with my journey, and I'll say, some of my failures have been very recent, and I still continue to come back. And I'll just use an example of a story for myself. Like last year was really hard for me revenue wise in my business, and I'm a business coach, so that's really hard because you're showing up trying to tell people that you can do amazing things with your business, and like your marketing, and you can get all these people in, and then it's just like, but it's not working for me. But I recognize that the problem wasn't my business, it wasn't the things that I was doing. And for most of you, that's probably the case. A lot of times it's yourself. And I go back to what I said about that self-trust and belief, and it's the stories that you're telling yourself of what you can't do or what you're doing wrong. And when you can pull yourself out of that and just let yourself we can say this because we're on the other side, but really, enjoy the experience and take it for what it is. That's what's going to get you to that next level. And, like just an example for myself, like I said, last year was was hard. I had actually some of my lowest months ever in my entire business, like in, I don't even know what years, 8 years in business. Like I've had like some of my lowest months last year, which led me to really judge and question myself a lot. And it took a lot of work to come out of that, to come out the other side. And I had a lot of trepidation and fear of doing things that I really, really wanted to do because of those things that had happened to me. And kind of starting to question whether or not I could actually continue to do them. But I persevered, I kept going, and the work I did wasn't on, necessarily all the outward stuff, the technical aspects of a business. It was on myself and going introspective. And that's the thing that I can tell most people is that's what's going to do the best. And when I said it can be that easy, like it can be that easy if you're willing to face those demons, right? And to face the devil and to come out the other side, no matter what happens. And for me, like last month, that resulted in my highest cash day, my highest week, my highest month in revenue ever, like ever in 8 years of business. And it also resulted in me like pulling the trigger on something that's been a dream of mine for the last 8 years, which is running my own, like I planned events for other people, but running my own retreats internationally. And PS, I literally just paid the deposit today for the venue for my upcoming retreat. So this thing that's been
Wow.
a vision for years, if
Congratulations.
I wouldn't have gone through the failures, I never would be here. So
Yeah.
Mm. One of the big reasons I'm asking this question too, because sometimes we gotta understand that when in the state of failure, it's like we are really collecting our data, right? A lot of data that we get to use later on.
yeah.
And sometimes they say data doesn't tell a story, but you get to tell a story from the data you've collected during that time when you're on the other side of the success ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to the other side, because you get good story to tell. Like Lori get a good story to tell because you experienced that stuff, and Vanessa get this incredible story to tell because nobody has got the same kind of story to tell. I mean, maybe a few
Mm-hmm.
people do, but you're one of the few that have this kind of story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about the people that you get to impact when you say, "Hey, I've been through this thing 9 times, and this is what was on my mind, in my body, how I was feeling, what I was telling myself, all these things." That's so much great content for people to listen to kind of like, hey, I'm gonna sit here and hear your story. Like this is a campfire thing, right? Campfire, we're talking about, hey, what was that like? So that experience is very valuable. So looking at your data-rich background, Vanessa, anything else that struck you as major failures that you want to talk about and share?
Hmm. I wanted to connect with Lori there on a couple of things because I thought it was like so huge. The one thing, and I like the risk of doing something versus the risk of doing nothing, right? And I think it's like so profound when we can kind of sit back and be like, I risked doing this thing versus doing nothing. And depend, if I wouldn't have went on to the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th time, like where would I be, right? And I, again, taking that risk of failure and then learning in that process. So that's super huge. And then, yeah, the story that you tell yourself, right? I know Brene Brown always talks about that, but the story I'm telling myself is what, and right, we're our own worst enemies and we're our own worst
Mm-hmm.
critics, and we judge ourselves and we put ourselves through that process. And it's so difficult to again put in that effort and come out on the other side, but the risk is super worth it. And sometimes we'll fail in that process, but it's being able to handle the failure, right? And I guess from a therapist perspective of being able to like utilize your coping skills and the practices and asking for help and being vulnerable in that process is so huge.
Mhm.
um, some other failures, I feel like, failures in relationships has been like a really big thing. No one really stuck with me. I've had a few partners along the way, and no one really kind of stuck with me through the failures and through the process besides the person I'm currently with. And he was like my biggest fan and my biggest supporter.
Mm.
And that was like so different for me. I'm like, what? You're sticking around even though I keep failing, and I'm like a big hot mess, and I'm like crying all the time, and I'm this like, you know, like you love this. So I think again, seeing your value and your worth in in that, and then knowing that someone else is going to see your value and worth and what you can achieve no matter what through those failures as well, right? It sounds like, Laura, you have a partner who's
Mhm.
also kind of stuck
Yeah.
through those
Mhm.
endeavors with you, right? And through really the high highs
Oh
and
yeah.
the low lows. And you're like, okay, this is what that means. So kind of looking back, all those past relationships, I wouldn't change those either, because those were definitely big lessons learned in knowing what I deserve and what I'm worth in a relationship, and other aspects of life and what I have to offer.
Mm. So like you definitely got to learn his mindset there, Vanessa. Definitely got to learn his
Mhm.
mindset. And you mentioned relationship too, which is I'm curious. Hey, is Lori, are your retreats or relationship based, or what are you retreat based on?
Uh, no, they are for business owners. So like this one is, it's called CEO and Flow. So eventually, who knows? I might do retreat ones, because that's a big part of entrepreneurship as well as your relationships.
Okay,
Yeah.
tell me if you don't mind, tell us about your retreat and congratulations on scoring your first one for you. But tell us about your retreat if you don't mind.
Sure. This is the first place that I'm actually even talking about it, so that's exciting. But it's
Mhm.
called the CEO in Flow retreat. It's going to be in Bali this November, and it's really centered around, it's for women, but CEOs, high achieving, visionary female entrepreneurs who want to make more money, who want that success in their business, in their life, in all aspects, not just their business. They want what comes along with having that independence of being a business, but they want to do it more in flow, more the way that they want to do it, because a lot of times these high achieving, visionary women are the people who do beat themselves up a lot. They are the people who people please and put other people and their things before themselves. So that ends up in busy schedules and not really focusing on their own personal wellness in order to actually make things happen. So going back to that concept of it can be that easy, that's really all it's centered around, is making business really, really easy while making that, whatever, tons of money.
I would think I was talking to one of my previous guests too, because we oftentimes you was talking about the people that you focus on, and oftentimes that person is actually you. But then you think back a little bit about it, right? Because oftentimes we often speaking from our niche, like the thing that we speak from, we're speaking from our niche, and we
Mhm.
often speaking to our niche. And it's interesting. I was talking to her, she was describing the people that she want to be a hero to, because that's one of the big questions I used to kind of like figure out my purpose. Sometimes have other people figure their purpose, it's like who you want to be a hero to, whatever. And oftentimes that person is a version of you, right? That have struggled through something, but now you're on the other side. Okay, now I gotta go back because you could see the victims of yourself in those situations. Like, I want to go save that person now. And whatever the anti-hero is, you're like, I'm going up against the anti-hero because that victim person, I'm going to save them. I'm gonna take care of them. I'm going to show them how they can save themselves like I did myself. And when you talk about your retreat to someone, like, oh, that makes sense now. You've made it. Like, okay, you can
Yes.
see other versions of yourself further down the line. Like, oh, I got to go get those folks up here too. Like, I've made it across the line. If that make any sense to you.
It does. There was some words that you used specifically because I do marketing and messaging, that I would be like, no, I would not use those words to describe it. But ultimately, yes, what you said is very valid. I mean, oftentimes as entrepreneurs, especially when you're running like a service-based business, whether you're, a therapist or you're a coach, or, just something that you have that really like close personal tie to it, you are helping somebody who is a past version of you, but it's also important to know that you can't save a past version of you. And I think that that's really, an important part in overall success, which is something we go into the retreat, because a lot of times that's what people are doing, and that's why they don't have the success that they want, is because they're attracting people that aren't ready necessarily for that change. Because when you were, when I was 8 years ago, I wasn't ready for someone like me to come in and
Mm.
have that impact in my life. So yes and no to what you
Mm,
said.
I'm gonna play with this little area. I like where you're going with this. So you're saying a couple years back you wouldn't be ready for you if you show up and says, "Hey, come this way." You were like, you would be still not ready to go that direction. So how do you like when you meet somebody that you know they need your help, but they don't?
Mhm.
Let me rephrase this way. Sometimes like you want to give somebody an answer they don't have a question for, and
Mhm.
they won't know what to do with that answer because they don't have the question for it. So when you meet that version of yourself that says need your help, how do you get those people to make the turn, Lori?
The people who aren't ready.
Who aren't ready, but you
Um,
know they need the help. Like they're starving, but they don't want what you have to give. Like,
okay, so this is a juicy topic for me, you could say, because this is a big mistake when it comes to marketing, that people are trying to convince people to change. And the thing is you cannot convince somebody to change. You cannot convince somebody that they can do things better. And my husband actually I just heard him walk in the door. I'm a coach, and I try to coach him all the time. He's like, stop doing your coach stuff on me, because if he doesn't want to hear it, it's not going to resonate. It's not going to have the impact. So getting out of your mind that you need to save those people, because that's really frustrating for you, because you're just like, but if you just did this, if you just did that, it would be so much better. But the thing is if they're not ready, that's just going to piss them off, frankly, and be like, stop telling me that, just be here, be supportive for me, or go away. So I think it's really about, you can show up as the best version of yourself. You can share your truth. You can say the things that you want to say to people, but you can't try to convince people that they need to change and they need to move. If they're ready to move, they will. And there's been times in the last few years when I absolutely was. And, like I think back to when I hired my own first business coach, and I literally had like zero money. I pulled money from my retirement fund to pay her, but because I knew it was going to work, because I was ready. And I 3 times what I invested her in the first month that I worked with her, because I knew that it was going to work and I was ready. But if I had done that even 6 months earlier with her, I probably wouldn't have made that money back, because I was not ready to do the work that went along with what that meant. So convincing someone to move generally isn't going to actually work, in my experience.
no, actually, I agree with you 100%. It's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we're talking about this because it's like you seen a guy that look like he's homeless and hungry, and you go over there and give him some food, and he throw it away because he's not hungry, he doesn't want food, he wants something
Mm-hmm.
else. And it's like he's trying to give people something that they never asked for, which is something that I
Mm-hmm.
really learned when I mentioned like earlier, like he's trying to give somebody an answer for a question they never asked. It's like they don't have no way to put the answer. It doesn't go anywhere for them. So I totally agree with you on that. So speaking as a therapist, Vanessa, I see you over there shaking. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Like, well, so in our world, we call it stages of change, and starts with like pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and then maintenance. So you got the 5 stages of change, and you're kind of, when someone comes and sits down in your office, you're kind of like, hey, where are you at? And acknowledging that, oh, I'm just contemplating, I'm just kind of here. And I'm like, okay, well, if we're not ready to put in the work, again, that effort, going back to that effort, it's not going to happen, right? And usually the therapist gets blamed for that. It's like, oh, me and my therapist weren't the right fit. And I'm like,
I'm gonna blame
like
it. I'm a
I'll take
therapist.
that.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not my staff, right? So I kind of, I know it's not, that it's just the person's not ready. And I think, again, ready, willing, and able to do something different, better, or more. And that's kind of the sentence I ask is, are you ready? Are you willing? And are you able? And what do you want, different, better, or more in your life? And where does that fit for you? And so people can kind of assess, right? And if you're actually being vulnerable and you're being honest with yourself, and again, genuine and authentic, you're gonna really give a correct answer, based on where you're at. And yeah, like you were kind of saying, in my words too, I cannot control other people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, right? I know that we always know this, but it's so funny because we do try to control it, right? We try to say, hey, and even in my own relationship, it's hard to date a therapist. It's hard to be in a relationship with a therapist, right? Like I feel bad for so I get it, because it is hard. Like my partner is like, stop, get out of my head, or stop therapizing. And it's really not necessarily me all the time, but it is one of it's also my personality. It's also why I'm good at my job, because it's who I am. I
Mhm.
care, I'm curious, I ask questions, I want to know. I'm like, where does so it's not necessarily the fact that I'm therapizing, because I don't get paid for that. But it's the fact that I'm just curious, and I really want to understand and empathize with you. So but I know that I can influence you, but I can't change, or I can't control you. So I really resonate with that, because it's something that we all really need to learn. Because once we start to invest in ourselves, and we put that effort that we're putting into changing somebody else back into ourselves, we're the only ones that we have control of, and so much more can change within ourselves than the other person.
Mm. Okay, that was awesome, by the way. And I think I'm thinking maybe Lori didn't like the when I say I want to be a hero too. People want to be a hero too. Maybe is that the word you say you would use in marketing, Lori?
I mean, it's a word that people use in marketing. It's not one that I use in the
Okay.
stuff that I
So,
teach, but yes, it's one that they use.
but it's a very powerful question for me. And here's how I think about it. So when I said the people I want to be a hero to, and I pick oftentimes I pick a person, but then I pick a community. So for example, in my case, I want to be a hero to the veterans community or the immigrants community.
Hmm.
Because when I say I want to be a hero to them, because I want to find resources for them. And once I figure out that community I want to serve, then now I become successful at my thing so they can see how it looks like.
Yeah.
So now then based on my recipe, they know what it is. Then they can go in and save themselves. So that's how I look at it, right? So now, but for me to have the energy to go up against the anti-hero, I need to figure out what the communities that I want to serve, the people I want to go be a hero to. And based
Hmm.
on that community, now I'm motivated, like, okay, whatever it is that is beating them down, I need to figure out how can I find solution for that? How can I convert that obstacle into raw material for me to really help them achieve the things they want to achieve? So now I'm motivated by when I was in the military, like being a hero for the American family because it was worth my sacrifice. Now I'm motivated to be a hero for the veterans community or the immigrant community because those community definitely reflect my own journey. So when I'm looking back at your own story, you're saying you want to go help these folks now because based on that that identity,
Hmm.
you can connect with it because you want to like I want to do something about that identity because when I was there, I wish the resources came to me, and shining like, hey, this is what you need to have. This is what you need to do. And then from there, you can figure out when you need to get started on it and when you're gonna take accountability for it. Now
Yeah.
we are close to getting to the wrap up time for this conversation. It's been awesome listening to you talk about your journey, Lori, and Vanessa. Finally got you on camera on the mic to talk about your divine 9, 10 times that you had to go into this process of winning
Divine nine,
eventually.
I love that. I'm totally going to use that.
But yeah, if we gotta wrap up and close out with the journey thus far, the conversation we've had, what are some of your biggest takeaway or any big giveaway you want to talk about, Lori, before we close out?
Big giveaway in terms of like,
Big giveaway and takeaway. Yeah, you got to do both.
oh, okay. Well, big giveaway, I guess, of what I'm giving to your community. I guess anybody who you have in your community who's entrepreneurs, business owners. I recently did a class which I would like to offer to people. It's called Content That Captivates, and while it's content based, it talks a lot about messaging, and it like everything that you were just saying totally goes with that in terms of how you speak about things and how you resonate with those people that you really do want to help, because when you speak a certain way, they're going to be able to see what you have to offer and come to you, so you don't have to feel like you're saving people, and you are really empowering people. So would invite anybody to connect with me that is interested in that. And then takeaway, just again, failure is going to happen. It's
Mm,
part of who you are. Own it, love it, embrace it, and just know that you are the thing 99% of the time that's standing in your way of the thing that you want. So do the self-reflection to know what that is, and then do that uncomfortable work to work through that. And those failures will turn into successes much faster than you would anticipate.
wow, powerful. Thank you so much, Lori. And other than on the social media net that this thing is streaming on, we're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Where else
Mhm.
can they reach you to connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Well, those are probably the best places to connect with me. Facebook is my primary, LinkedIn is my secondary social media platform. Um, Facebook on my personal profile and in my Facebook group, which is called the Success Zone.
Ah. And over to you, Vanessa, all the way up there in Canada. What are some of your biggest takeaway, or if you have any giveaway too, you can share that too as well. But what are your biggest
Mhm.
takeaway and giveaway you gotta share?
Yeah, I think my biggest giveaway is to really to like kind of Lori said is to embrace the failure and really know that you're going to grieve in that process. I think, changing the word guilt to grief and not feeling guilty for things that you're experiencing or for the things that you're going through. But to grieve, you're going to grieve that process. You're going to grieve the failures and what you've gone through, and so embrace that and recognize it, and honestly acknowledge your feelings behind that. I think it's
Mm,
so important to really acknowledge your feelings. We tend to have all the stuff up here in our head, but we got to bring it down to heart centered and really look at what's within, and acknowledge and validate ourself, and validate our accomplishments, and validate our successes and our failures. So that would be my biggest giveaway. My biggest takeaway is that I'm still learning, right? I owning a business, starting my company in 2021, knowing the ebbs and flows, understanding like what I need to do. I'm still gonna fail. My biggest fear is failing in my entire company and having to close the doors, but I know that it'll come with challenges, but I can also persevere. I've persevered 9 times. So I know that if I had to shut my door, I don't know if I'd do it 9 times, but maybe. um, so all jokes aside, but realistically, I really like, my biggest takeaway is that I'm just going to embrace the failures, and also recognize and celebrate the successes, big or small. So
wow, that's powerful as well. Thank you so much, Vanessa and Lori. And you guys are tuning to Entrepreneurs Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. And if you're catching this conversation live, go and put hashtag live in the chat, in the comment section. And if you catch us on replay, go ahead and put hashtag replay, because we'd love to know that you guys are checking us out, seeing what's going on. Just give us a, hashtag something that's saying, hey, we're tuning in. And once more, ladies, anything else, any last word you want to share, drop before we close out?
I appreciate your time, Asher. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure getting to know you, and you have such a big presence that you bring to your podcast, and it's really enlightening, and so I appreciate your time, and yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'm honored to be here today.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I would just like to second that. I've really enjoyed this, and to Vanessa, just kind of the banter and the conversation amongst all of us. So thank
Yeah,
you.
Well, I've
appreciate it.
I've connected two awesome minds today. You guys have been amazing. And with that, folks, make it an awesome